y'all, it's Ilana and welcome back to my channel. So happy Singles Awareness Day if you're watching this on Monday, February the 15th. I wanted to do something fun and answer your dating Q&As. Some are tied to dating and sex and just being single. And I want to thank everyone on Instagram for submitting your questions. Obviously, I really wanted to ask my subscribers, but I still don't have the community tab feature because I need 1,000 subscribers to do that. So please subscribe to my channel as I post content about navigating life and dating in San Francisco and Portland because that's where I'm currently living right now. And without further ado, let's just go ahead and get into this video. So the first question that I'm going to answer is the following. How many people are asking for COVID test results if they want a one-nighter? This is a really interesting question, so I want to be very upfront and transparent with y'all. I have not gotten tested for COVID at all since this pandemic, and I'm going to tell you why. The reason I haven't gotten a COVID test is because, well, I haven't experienced any of the symptoms. And really, you're only supposed to get a COVID test if you are experiencing the symptoms. Many people have been taking advantage of getting a COVID test and they lie when they try to schedule an appointment saying, oh yeah, I think I have symptoms, or they will say I was possibly exposed to COVID. Yeah, you should also get a COVID test if you really do think you have been exposed to COVID. But I will say I haven't put myself into any of those situations. Even when I go out, I've been very cautious and mindful, and I just haven't experienced any of the symptoms. The real reason that you're supposed to get one is if you have been exposed to someone who's tested positive for COVID or if you've experienced the symptoms. I haven't had that happen to me, so therefore there really hasn't been a reason for me to get a COVID test. In my experience, it hasn't happened to me where people have asked me if I've gotten tested for COVID before hooking up. That hasn't happened, but I'm sure there are people that may be asking, are you wearing masks out in public? Are you getting tested for COVID? And I am going to be upfront and say, hey, I haven't gotten a COVID test because I haven't experienced the symptoms. I've been very fortunate enough to keep myself healthy during this time because I stay indoors, I wear a mask, I social distance, and I try to be very responsible during this time, which is probably as to why I have not gotten sick. I would say I'm sure it's happening. I haven't really heard of many people talking about if they're getting asked for a COVID test, but it's not to say that it hasn't happened. I apologize if that doesn't completely answer your question the way that you want it to, but that's just my take on it. This next question says, I'm not single, but maybe you could list things couples do to single people that are annoying. I always try not to assume people want to date or say your time will come. First of all, yeah, the first thing that's very annoying to say to a single person is that your time will come. It will happen when you least expect it. You need to love yourself first before you can love someone else. Those are so irritating. For the longest time, I used to believe that you need to love yourself first before you love someone else. And honestly, I think that's kind of bullshit. And here's why. Because that is saying that you don't deserve love if you don't love yourself. I think that's kind of unfair. What I will say is I do believe you should be in a healthy mindset to date people. So if you're not currently over your ex, or maybe you're heartbroken, then maybe you shouldn't be dating or try to make yourself fall in love with somebody else first. I do think it's important that you work on yourself to get yourself back in a healthy mindset so you can get back out there and date again. But I think it's kind of garbage to say that you're not allowed to be in love with somebody else if you don't love yourself first. I will say I do love myself. I value my time, and obviously I do have a lot of love to give, but I also am mentally healthy. Okay, that's a lie. I struggle with a lot of mental health disorders. Despite all of that, I am in a healthy mindset to where I do want to date, to where I do want to fall in love again. So it's really about just being in a healthier mindset. I think loving yourself is definitely not a requirement because we're all going to have our insecurities, and that's like saying you have to get over this insecurity, otherwise you're not qualified to be in love with somebody. I think that's false, and we need to stop spreading that narrative because I actually do find it to be a little bit harmful. I think other things that are annoying to single people is saying things like, oh, you're young, your time will come, you'll find somebody. Because the truth is, you honestly may not find somebody. And that's okay. I kind of have accepted that there could be a chance that I may never get married because I'm not going to settle. I mean, honestly, if I wanted a boyfriend, easy. I could go out there right now and get one ASAP. I could respond yes to every single guy that likes me on Hinge and start chatting with them, and boom, we get into a relationship. But am I going to? No, because I got standards, and I'm not going to just get into a relationship for the sake of getting into a relationship. I want to get into a relationship with someone who is like-minded, like me. Basically, I kind of want to date the male version of Ilana Pinsky, who also meets the requirements of what I'm looking for in a partner, which I've made a whole video on. I'll have it linked right up here for you to watch after this video. So those are some really annoying things that I hate. I also really hate it when other couples will single shame singles for being single, or that the fact that they try to set you up with somebody. I think it's really annoying when they say, oh, I have a friend that you would totally love. How do you know what I love? Have you read my checklist of what I'm looking for in a person? How do you know if I'm gonna even find that person attractive? You don't get to decide for me whether you think that person is right for me. Just because you may think that they're right for you if you are dating your partner, that doesn't mean they're right for me just because you get along with that person. So that's also really freaking annoying, and I can't stand being set up. In fact, I got into an argument, not necessarily an argument, but I got really annoyed with one of my male friends who tried to convince me to go out with his best friend, and I said, I'm really not interested like that. I just want to stay friends and keep it on a very neutral level, and that's that. And he tried to rebut against my argument, and I said, no, listen, you are single shaming me when you are telling me that I should be going out with somebody just because that they're single, that they're Jewish, that they like cats. No. I won that argument, he apologized, and we moved on. We're still friends. It's not a big deal. Okay, we're gonna go on to the next question. I got this question, and it really kind of irritated me, but I think it's really important that I talk about it. So this person asked me, is wanting sex with Jewish girls because they're stereotyped as being amazing in bed anti-Semitism or anti-Semitic? The answer is yes, and I'm going to tell you why this is considered anti-Semitic. I don't know if you know this by now, but I am Jewish. There's nothing wrong with being attracted to Jewish women, but if you are basing something off of a stereotype, like this person is saying is wanting sex with Jewish women because they're stereotyped as being amazing in bed, that is fetishing. And we're not going to fetish anyone. When it comes to fetishing, it's based on a power dynamic and also based with stereotypes. So there is this slur towards Jewish women. I'm going to say the slur, but I ask you to not repeat it unless if you are a Jewish woman. That word is called Jewess. And basically this slur is pretty misogynistic, and some women do try to reclaim the power back of this word. I personally do not use this word to define myself. I actually try to ignore the fact that it exists because I want nothing to do with this word, even though I'm very well aware of it. It's the same thing with the K word, referred to Jewish people. So with this word Jewess, it's basically stereotypically describing a Jewish woman based on her appearance, her physical attributes when it comes to sexual physical attributes, that is, and her personality. But it definitely sounds to me a little bit misogynistic, which we're not about here on this channel at all. Yeah, it's fetishing, and fetishing can definitely be a derivative of anti-Semitism, 100%. Even though you are saying that you love Jewish women, and there's a difference between admiring Jewish culture and wanting to get to know a person because you like them for them and they happen to be Jewish. But if you are literally just going to go out with somebody just because of their religion and their stereotypical attributes, that's not okay. I'm going to leave down an article for you to read when it comes to fetishing Jewish women. But this is a fetish, and it's something that we should not be doing. And if you are really interested in Jewish women, you really need to ask yourselves, what is it about Jewish women that you find attractive? Are you actually attractive to this person, or is this really just a power dynamic? It is kind of like the same thing with the whole white male Asian woman thing that goes on, because again, there's that power dynamic and that Asian women are stereotypically submissive. And I also do not like that. That never sat well with me. But you really just gotta think about those things and ask yourself this. Long story short, yes it is. Don't fetish people. Let's move on to the next question. There's one person who asked me like a ton of questions, so I'm gonna pretty much just cover all of these. This one says, how long should you date someone before making it official? That's a very interesting question because everybody moves at different paces. It is a conversation that you need to have with your partner, and I think, at least for me, this is how I would determine when I want to define a relationship and make it official. For me personally, I would probably want to define it at the 5 to 6 month mark. I know a lot of people have defined it within the 2 to 3 month mark, and I know as someone who's been single for almost 10 years, nope, I can't. I cannot get into a relationship after knowing somebody for like 2 or 3 months. Just nope. The kinds of criteria that I would need to have in order to define a relationship for myself specifically, and of course this is up to you whether you want to follow it, but this is what I recommend if you want to define it, because again, everyone moves at different paces. What I recommend is determining your sexual compatibility with one another. Determine how well you two are able to solve conflict and disagreement. I think that's really important because you need to know how two people are going to react in a situation where someone could get frustrated or there's a disagreement. You need to learn how to communicate that. I'm not saying you need to get into a fight first, but do let conflicts come up. It's okay if conflicts happen. See how you two work it out, and that will give you a really good idea to determine if you two are both mature enough to get into a relationship. Another thing that I recommend is, do you feel like you know this person well enough to get into a relationship? I'm not saying you need to know every single thing about them. You don't need to know their whole life story, but you definitely need to get a good grasp on who they are, what they like, what they don't like. You need to know what makes them tick. That is really important. If you don't know what makes them tick, then you may not have a very happy relationship. You want to know everything about them in a way where you can navigate that relationship. Those are 3 things for me, or 3 or 4 things that I need in order for me to determine if I am ready to finally make it official. And I think that's a good way for you to determine that too. Now, if you feel like 3 months is enough time and you've been able to accomplish all of that within those few months, then define the relationship. Some people may take longer. Have a conversation about it. Communicate and talk about your intentions. I think that is very important. Make sure that you have check-ins with each other and determine, how are you feeling? Do you want to keep progressing and moving things forward? Having those check-ins every single week is very important, so you two constantly know where you stand. And if one person is saying, I want a relationship, and another person is saying, I don't want one, then maybe it's best that you don't get into a relationship with that person. Communicate, go at your own pace, let your person know how you choose to progress, because I can tell you, if I date somebody new, I'm going to make a note that I am not going to just jump into a relationship and define it after 2 or 3 months of dating. I've been single for so long, and by the time that my single streak is broken, that's gonna be a big deal for me. Seriously, the day that I get a boyfriend, it's gonna be a huge deal for me to say goodbye to my single status after all these years. And I wanna make sure that this is the right person, that I am so sure that this is a person that I wanna get into a relationship with. So the questions that I'm asking for myself, I think could be really good questions that you can ask for yourself as well. I hope that answers your question. How do you deal with jealousy with all your friends get into relationships? Oof. This is a good one, y'all. I would say in college and grad school is definitely where I experienced the most jealousy because I was very uncomfortable about being single. I think one way that you deal with jealousy is when you learn how to become more and more comfortable with being single and being able to embrace it and love it. And that will make you feel a lot less jealous. It's very important to not show bitterness or frustration when you have a friend that gets engaged or a friend that gets married or a friend who gets into a new relationship. You always want to be happy for the person. Assuming that the person that they're getting into a relationship with is a good person, then of course you can express your concerns where you're not happy about that. But anyway, besides the point, I'd be lying if I said I didn't get jealous or lonely about being single from time to time. And I actually do want to make a whole video about when you feel lonely and the downsides of being single. I have made a video about that before. It's kind of old, some of the worst things about being single. I also want to talk more about honest breakdowns of how I feel about being single, because as much as I say like I love being single, yeah, there are times where I get sad about it and I get jealous of my friends who are happily in a relationship, and sometimes I wonder, why did they get so lucky? When am I gonna experience love? Sometimes I choose to ignore my jealousy and my feelings, which isn't something that I recommend. Don't ignore your feelings. Be in touch with your feelings and understand them. Long story short is getting more comfortable with it and being more accepting about being single, and then you're not going to feel as bad about it, because when you embrace your single status, you're gonna be a lot happier and you're gonna feel more open to talk about your singleness with other people in a positive way. Whether it's your hookup stories or people that you've gone out with, you can talk about your frustrations about being single, but never let somebody say, oh, I'm so glad that I don't have to deal with that anymore. That's another annoying thing to say to single people, by the way. That's what I do. I've just learned to keep myself occupied and to keep dating and to hook up with guys. It kind of distracts me from feeling jealous. That's how I do with it, and that's how I cope with it. How important is religion for you when dating someone? Honestly, not important at all. So as I mentioned earlier in this video, I am Jewish. I am open to dating all religions, marrying all religions. I do not restrict myself to only dating Jewish. In fact, to be honest, I have only dated one Jewish guy, and it wasn't even really dating. It was more of me making out with somebody when I was 16 years old and that they were Jewish. Now, I will say I would like my kids to be Jewish, but the thing is, as I have learned more about being more inclusive and openness and not forcing religion on a kid, I think this is a conversation that I would need to have with my partner to see if we want to raise our kids at a certain kind of religion or if we want to let them choose, assuming that we're in an interfaith relationship. I kind of do see myself in an interfaith relationship. I typically don't really go for Jewish guys. It's not to say that I wouldn't ever. I've just never really found myself dating Jewish men. I've mostly dated Catholic guys. The Catholic men, they love me. Besides the point, it's not important to me, but it's still a conversation that I would need to have with my partner if I'm in an interfaith relationship, making sure that they're open to dating someone that is Jewish, potentially raising kids Jewish, or do we want to let our kids decide what religion they want? That's another option that I'm willing to explore. Obviously, like, having Jewish kids isn't a deal breaker, it's just a preference, but it's something that I could live without. That's my take on it. I do not just want to end up with someone that's Jewish. If I do, cool, that makes my mom happy. Trust me, that would make her very happy if I end up with a Jewish guy. But again, I'm very open. It doesn't matter to me. How do you address unconscious bias in your dating process? Race, gender, etc. Okay, so this is a good question. This can kind of piggyback off to like the question with the fetishing that I mentioned earlier, which you should not do. But in terms of bias, this is something that I've actually struggled with. I will say, full transparency moment, this may be very controversial, and I definitely am going to just be very vague about it because I don't want to like cancel myself here. But on dating apps, you can set your race preferences, and I have set my race preferences to specific races, and I no longer do that. I have it open to everyone. And I definitely have realized that I need to not have these biases And one thing that I've also noticed is like when you choose specific races on a dating app, it can also be fetishing as well, and I don't want to be any part of that. I've acknowledged that I've taken part in that. It's something that as a white woman, I need to check my privilege and realize this isn't okay. I need to be more inclusive. I have opened it up to other people. So that is that, and I think all dating apps should delete the race preference, because I do think that prioritizing other races over another, it's racist. It increases opportunity to fetish somebody, which is not what we're going to do. I've had to deal with it, and I've just had to, open my eyes a little bit and realize, Ilana, this is pretty racist. You shouldn't be doing this. You should be inclusive and not setting your race standards. Like, why would you do that? It's now open to everyone, and I'm still learning and growing from that. I definitely don't think that we need to have that as a feature on dating apps. And when it comes to gender, now I don't know if they're talking about like mentioning transgender into this, and if I would date somebody that's transgender. I've actually had this conversation with my friend Marty, who is on my podcast, and he's a trans man. And we talked about dating and the complications of dating as someone who's transgender, and he had a lot of interesting things to say. I've even done my own research to educate myself, like what you should know about dating someone who is transgender, especially when it comes to sex. One thing that I will say for this is not wanting to date someone who is trans just because they are trans. That is transphobic. Or when you go on a date with somebody, you're physically attracted to the person, and they tell you that they're transgender, and then all of a sudden you're no longer attracted to them. That's transphobic. So for me, I probably would be open to dating someone trans, but the thing is, I would never ask somebody what's in their pants. That is absolutely not okay. That's very transphobic. So I would want somebody to have that conversation with me. The thing is, when it comes to your sexuality, that's actually not based off genitals. It's based off the gender. So here's the thing. I do like men. When it comes to genitalia, I don't date somebody just because of their genitals. I date somebody because of their gender. When it comes to a point, I could choose to leave the relationship, but I would never ever refuse to date somebody who's trans just because they're trans. That's very transphobic. Let me tell you something. I have seen so many hot trans men on TikTok, and I'm just like, damn, he is good looking. I can definitely be attracted to somebody physically because of their gender, but at the same time, I do have my sexual needs, and I still want them to be met. That is my stand on it, and I recognize what my biases are, and I recognize that I have privilege as a cis white female. I am still growing and learning every day, and I want to be as inclusive as possible. And that's my take on it. I'm probably canceled after this video. I'm sure everyone has unsubscribed after that answer. Let's just go on to the next question. How do you prevent yourself from getting emotionally attached after sex? Oh, this is a great question. I am very guilty of getting emotionally attached after sex. To me, when it comes to sex, I see sex as this great way to connect with a person on an emotional and physical level. Now, because I'm in Portland for a temporary period of time, I cannot get into a relationship, and I don't want to give too much about dating in Portland away because I want to make a whole separate video about that, but what I will say is I'm gonna have to have sex with guys, and just have short-term situations. And I'm still trying to navigate how to just have casual short-term relationships, because I'm not gonna lie, I do like sex. I wanna have sex while I'm in Portland. I think knowing that I can't be in a relationship right now will definitely make that easier on me. Knowing your current situation and being aware of that really helps. I think recognizing that I'm in Portland for a short period of time will make it easier for me to not get attached to somebody, just because I already know that there's going to be an expiration date on this relationship. And I would say that's going to make it easier on me. I'm not going to say this is going to be easy for me in general, but this is what I'm working with right now. And I got to give it a try, especially if I have needs that want to be met and I don't want to be sexually frustrated. This is what I need to do, okay? Let's go on to the next question. Tips for getting over someone you dated. How long does it take you? I don't know if you're talking about me personally. It varies. So I made a whole video about me getting closure from a short-term situation that I got very hurt from, because secretly I kind of wanted it to turn into a relationship and I was lying to myself about it, and I got very hurt from it. But it took me about a month and a half to get closure from that breakup, and that's how long it took me to get over that person. But when my ex and I broke up, it took me a year and a half to get over him. I had a very hard time getting closure from my relationship, and so did he. I think he experienced a lot more hurt a couple months after we broke up, and I was starting to heal more while he was hurting more, and then his hurt started to hurt me, and it was just this really toxic cycle of not being able to move forward. I think the best thing to do when it comes to getting over somebody, now that I've grown and I've dated more guys, first things first is to unfollow them on all social medias. I know that's hard to do, but it's going to help you feel a little bit better. As I mentioned before in my closure video, archiving messages, deleting them, just hiding them so they're out of sight, out of mind, that can help you get over them. Maybe hide any pictures that you have together, put them in a separate folder and don't look at them. Maybe password it. Being able to write letters to yourself or letters to the person that you wish you could say all these feelings for, but not actually sending the letter, that can help you get over it, and it helps you get closure for yourself. And being able to cut off contact. You can always get that one clarity conversation post-breakup, but then you need to cut off the contact. And that is one of the hardest things to do, is to be tempted to want to contact that person again, but you can't. So that's what I do. I think trying to get closure for yourself is going to help you move on from that situation. And everyone experiences getting over somebody at different rates. There's no race to do it. There's no competition. It's going to vary for someone. Like I said, it took me a year and a half to get over a 2-year relationship that I was in. It took me a month and a half to get over a 2-month situation that I was in. It's taken me about, I want to say, 5 months to 6 months to get over a 7th month situation that I was in. It really varies. Finding closure for yourself does the trick. And again, I really encourage you to watch my video on how to get closure. That will really help you get an idea of how to really move on from that kind of pain and hurt. How do you deal with overthinking / anxiety while dating? Oh my God. I still don't even really know how to deal with this. I have a lot of anxiety. I'm not gonna lie, I am very confident in who I am, but when it comes to dating, I don't overthink things as much, but I definitely do have a lot of anxiety and just wondering, does this person even like me? I think that's the biggest thing for me, is just wondering if the person even likes me. What do they really think of me? Are they lying to me after I tell them what my intentions are and they tell me that they're on the same wavelength as me? Those are the biggest things that give me anxiety when it comes to dating. That is part of dating. You have to date with anxiety. You have to go into dating being scared. Otherwise, you'll never be able to put yourself out there. Date while you're scared. I mean, I have gotten hurt after guy after guy after guy. And I just have to bounce back and keep putting myself back out there. It's like they say, when you fall off the horse, you gotta get back up. And that's what I do when it comes to dating. So for me, it's not that I ignore my anxiety, but you just gotta do it while you're scared. If you have some anxieties or thoughts that are worrying you, there are ways that you can communicate that with your partner while you're dating. That's why these check-in conversations are so important, because it allows you to not be anxious and allows you to have a clearer mind to continue to date. Anxiety sucks big time. For me, that's just kind of how I deal with it. I hope that what I said helps you too, but trust me, I'm still working on this one. So I really do apologize if I didn't give a good answer for this, because this is something that I'm still kind of working on myself, is dealing with anxiety when it comes to dating and wondering if this person likes me or not. So I'm so sorry if I didn't give a good answer for that. When is the right time to open up and be vulnerable while dating? Again, that's up to you. I'm an open book. I love to be transparent with people. I'm very honest. I'm not afraid to hold back and share what's on my mind. It really depends on the person you're talking to. Think about how the person makes you feel. Do you feel comfortable around this person? Are you willing to share a little bit more? Do you feel like this person wouldn't judge you based off your vulnerabilities? That should be a really good indicator to know how much you're willing to share. I have definitely been vulnerable on a first date. Some first dates I don't share that much just because I just kind of determine what kind of energy a person is giving to me. And if people are giving me good energetic vibes and they're very invested, in what my life has to offer to them, then I'm willing to be a little bit more vulnerable and open. But if I feel like I'm not getting a lot of good vibes from them, or I just sense disinterest in their tone of voice, I'm not gonna share as much because they're not gonna give a shit. And then I'm just sharing my open and vulnerable thoughts with somebody. So kind of go based off their energies and their tones and their personality. And it also depends on your comfort level. There's no wrong or right time to do that. You gotta do what is most comfortable to you. I'm filming. Hush. I know that sounds very cliche, but it's true. I hope that helps. So yeah, that was a lot of information that I shared with you. I hope that it answered your questions and that it helped you in some kind of way. And if it did help you and you thought everything that I have to say was insightful, make sure you give this video a thumbs up. And with that, I will see you with a brand new video. Bye!